Hey everyone, it's Jessie here. Welcome back to Jessie's Hangout. If you're new here, hello and welcome. You guys pretty much know what we're going to be talking about in today's episode. This is episode number 4. We're going to be talking about the Elisa Lam case and the Cecil Hotel. And I'm gonna first talk about a little bit of the background of the Cecil Hotel, then I'll get into the story of the Elisa Lam case. But before I go into anything of today's topic, if you are triggered or if you are sensitive to any of the topics talked about in today's episode, please do not listen to today's episode. Or if you do choose to listen to this episode, please listen to it with somebody like your significant other, your best friend, or somebody like that. Somebody that you could trust enough to have somebody sit there with you while you listen to today's episode. Also, if you're under the age of 18, I highly recommend you get permission from your parental unit or guardian. Ask them if you can listen to today's episode, and if you can, listen to it with them. I highly recommend that because it's very, very sensitive, very touchy subject, but it's also a very strange subject, if that makes any sense as well. So with that said, let's kind of get into today's topic. A little bit of background of the Cecil Hotel. The Cecil Hotel opened its doors on December the 20th, 1924. It was a couple of years before the stock market crashed and the economy just pretty much crashed and burned, and everybody started losing their job, everybody started losing their businesses, everything just started hurting really, really bad. Everything just kind of exploded around that time. And it was really hard for the Cecil Hotel to thrive. It used to be a thriving hotel until that time, and then it just became a place where a lot of homeless people accumulated over the years, and then it got so dangerous down there because of the location, because the Cecil Hotel is located in downtown California, or downtown Los Angeles, California. It's located on Skid Row. It's a very, very dangerous alleyway, or just a little, you could pretty much say alley. It's a very, very dangerous place, not because of the homeless. There are just people who are homeless just because they just don't have a job. They're just having a hard time, and they just live on the streets for a while. There was a guy that was interviewed in the Cecil Hotel in the mysterious case of Elisa Lam docuseries they did for Netflix, where they did talk to a old resident of the Cecil Hotel and of Skid Row. He was from New York. He had a job, and then he just went to California, Los Angeles, and just kind of found himself living on the streets for 21 years. And he kind of just talks about the Cecil Hotel and how dangerous it was back in his day and how dangerous it was now, and just all sorts of things. They interviewed the former management of that place. They interviewed a lot of people. They didn't really interview Elisa Lam's parents in this docuseries. I just want to put that out there right now. They just really didn't. I think they're just trying to move on from this. But it's a little hard to move on for something that was so tragic, but yet mysterious in a certain way as well. The Cecil Hotel was also notorious for not only having a lot of homeless people live on Skid Row, but the kind of people they had on Skid Row. There was a lot of people who lived down there who were released from a mental hospital and didn't have a job or couldn't hold a job, and they were just down there. Living down there, there was a lot of people who lived down there who have substance abuse problems, which is anywhere from drinking to drugs to both. There was also a lot of people, not only were there people that have been out of jail or been having the substance problem or been out of a mental hospital. It was also notorious for a lot of accumulating or attracting a lot of serial rapists, a lot of serial murderers. I think his name was Robert Rodriguez. He was like a real huge Satan type person. He had it in his hand. He would do a lot of rituals inside the Cecil Hotel. I mean, he was really he was a really criminally insane person, and he would go after women down there, and the sad part about it is it's not really funny, but the sad part about it is people in the Cecil Hotel who ran the Cecil Hotel were so used to seeing that, and that it was so normal, and it was so sad that people didn't think anything of it. That's the sad part, because it was so poorly run around the 60s and the 70s. It was so poorly run even into 2013, when the case happened. It was so poorly run, and it was so poorly maintenance kept up, even though they tried everything. And you could try everything and do what you're supposed to do, but a hotel's gonna sometimes be poorly run no matter what you do. It just happens. And it was just so, that hotel was so notorious for for people being acting unusual, for people doing drugs, and people just acting really odd, that they never thought anything of it. Well, during the 60s, or into the 40s and on, like around that time, the Cecil Hotel became a place where it was for dedicated to helping homeless people in need. And so they had one floor where it was just the monthlies, where they would just, if a homeless person needed a couple of weeks to stay in there, or just a couple of days, they would just stay in the bottom part of the hotel, which was the first floor. And then I think 4 or 5 floors would be dedicated to the ones who would stay there permanently. They had their own elevator. They would take their own elevator, and there was a floor for the guests of the Cecil Hotel, which they stayed in the upper floors. That was for the Cecil Hotel guests. And it went on like that for a long time, until 2013, when the Elisa Lam case happened, and then the serial murder dude happened, and just a lot of things began to happen in that hotel, and it was a lot of bad vibes in that hotel. And not only was it the Cecil Hotel notorious for notorious for a serial murderess living in there, and just for serial rapists and serial murderers living down there, and for just homeless people, and mentally insane people, and mental patients, and jailbirds, and all that type of stuff. Not only was it notorious for that, it was also notorious for people committing suicides, people dying under mysterious circumstances. It was known for that a lot. The former manager that was interviewed in that docuseries on Netflix, she said the 10 years that she worked at that place, there was 80 deaths. There was 80 deaths total, but there was more than that. But in the time span that she was there, there was 80 deaths there. And that's scary, and very tragic, and very horrible, and very terrifying. So, in that amount of span, that was how many deaths would occur just in a 10-year span. That'd be like roughly around that. And the Cecil Hotel just had a really bad reputation of housing drug addicts, mental patients, homeless people who couldn't didn't have a job, a lot of murderers, a lot of people who were in and out of jail, and that kind of thing. They were just notorious for attracting the bad people, the wrong people, and the fact that there were so many homeless people on Skid Row, it just gave the Cecil Hotel a bad name. And it was just crazy. It went from just having a hard time in the 1920s, and then in the future just kind of was notorious for a lot of things bad happening in that place. It did get sold for $200 million, and it did get handed over to new management. And when it got handed over to new management, they gave the residents who lived in the hotel eviction notices, and they were basically back out on Skid Row living on the streets again. Um, because they can't afford an apartment. It's expensive to live in Los Angeles. Just to have an apartment is like $2,000 just to live in an apartment, or just to get an apartment. It's expensive. Trust me. I've seen a lot of YouTubers tell you how expensive it is just to have an apartment. Just even in other places like just in a lot of places in LA. Even in Washington, it's a little expensive there too, but it's very expensive in New York and very expensive in California as well. Um, it's just really crazy. So they gave them the eviction notice, and now there's hardly anybody in there other than just the guests that attend the Cecil Hotel. They just have a lot of guests in there that stay in the hotel, but it also that the hotel is also notorious for being really haunted. And but in January of 2021, the Ghost Avengers were the last people who were granted permission to have cameras and record inside the building, because after that they were no longer allowing people with cameras inside the building to record anything or interview anybody in there. Um, So they got special permission to go and see if this place was haunted and visit the places where Elisa Lam was, and get a little bit of background of the place and a little bit of background of the serial murderers that was heard of. That they also did a docu-series on him as well. You guys should check that out at Netflix. There's also a Netflix series of the Cecil Hotel and Elisa Lam missing persons slash accidental drowning case. They also did one on the Ghost Avengers also did an episode back in January 2021. Like I said, they did an episode where they went to go see if the hotel was haunted. If you own Discovery Plus, it's on there. You guys can watch it. You just type in Ghost Avengers and it should pop up with all the other series that are dedicated to the Ghost Avengers have done. They did an hour-long episode of it. It was really creepy and really insane to know that a place that had that much bad energy could do that. I mean, it's just crazy, and it's terrifying at the same time. And with that background and all of that said, let's get into Elisa Lam's story. She was one of the big stories that stood out apart from uh, Robert Rodriguez, if that's his name. I could be saying his name wrong, but besides that, the notorious serial murderess that lived in the Cecil Hotel, this was another one that was known for that. This happened in 2013, in January into February of 2013. Elisa Lam was a 21-year-old tourist. She came to LA to see new places around LA. Elisa Lam is a university student of British Columbia. She loved to write. She had a Tumblr and a blog page where she would just write about her experiences when she traveled, just her experience with life. She would just be really open about her bipolar disorder. She suffered from a bipolar disorder. She took medications for it. She would often talk about her struggles with that. She was a really open person. She wrote really good. And if anybody has ever learned or been educated, and I've kind of educated myself a little bit, but I'm not I don't have a PhD or anything by no means, but I just kind of educated myself about it. And if from what I hear from PhD counselors or people that will help you with talking if you need to, or just counselors, that type of thing, if that makes any sense. From what I hear, when you have a bipolar disorder, you write a lot. You write a lot, whether it's just mumbo jumbo, but you write a lot. Sometimes you get your best stories out of it. Sometimes they're sometimes writing stories and telling stories from their mouth sometimes gets them into a lot of trouble. It gets them into a lot of trouble, and a lot of stories come out that probably shouldn't come out, but they come out. And that's another thing that happens with bipolar disorder is people make a lot of impulsive decisions where they just don't think of the consequences and they just do it. And that's what happens with a lot of bipolar people, or with a lot of bipolar people who have that disorder. Um, it's a really really rough disorder to have. It takes emotional and physical toll on somebody, and it does mentally and physically. It's exhausting, and I've seen a lot of people who have told their stories that have expressed how exhausting it is and how scary it is. I will never truly understand what it's like to have bipolar disorder. I will never understand what it's like to be in their shoes when they have a manic moment or a hydromanic moment or a hypomanic moment or whatever you call that one. I will never understand that, nor will I ever pretend to understand that. I just have educated myself a little bit into knowing that because I've known some people around me who have dealt with that disorder. It's very, very dangerous disorder. You have to take a lot of pills for it. There's like 4 different ones, I think, 3 or 4 different pills you have to take. A lot of them help your mood swings. A lot of them just kind of help you work through whatever manic moment you have. It just kind of helps you mellow out. It's kind of like, I don't want to compare it to ADHD, but it's kind of like having a really, really high energy moment and then you're coming down from it and you just feel like you just want to cry, and you feel hopeless and you just have really bad thoughts like suicidal thoughts or harming yourself thoughts, and it's very dangerous. And Elisa Lamb was going through that. She was suffering through that. She was going through that. It was hard, and being 21 years old and still trying to find yourself, it was really, really hard for her to go through that. She expressed a lot of that in her writings a lot on Tumblr, and even expressed that in the blog she had until she went to Tumblr, but she left it up for people to read even though she was more active on her Tumblr account. You could just tell that she struggled through it. And when she went on this vacation, it wasn't so much of going on vacation to have fun. It was just so much of her just trying to prove to people and also prove to herself that she could be just like anybody else. She could just be normal and go places and do things like normal people, even despite having bipolar disorder. She just wanted to find happiness and joy and love in life, and it was really, really hard for her to do it. And so she went on a trip to California, where she visited the San Diego Zoo, and she kind of just toured around for the first 2 days she was there. And then on the 26th of January, after being there for 2 days and going and doing things, she checked into the Cecil hotel. It was basically a cheap hotel for her to look at. She basically found it online, was drawn to it. She had no idea how bad that place was. Nobody knew how bad that place was because they did put that on there, which is bad for their business, nonetheless, at that time. So she checked into the Cecil Hotel. She stayed with a group of girls that basically were her roommates for that time that she was there. And the time that she was there, she started exhibiting some very strange behavior. She started writing things down on sticky notes and sticking it on people's beds that were in there with her, and it would say go away or get out or something like that. Sometimes she wouldn't open the door for the guests. She would have this thing where they would have to have a password to come in or something like that. She would just become she just became a nuisance to the guests that were staying in the same room that she was, and just everybody around her. She would just there was also a moment that one of the former managers said that she would come downstairs and throw her hands up and say, I'm crazy, and so is LA's crazy. And then she would just kind of go on about her business, and it was just really strange. But they also didn't really do anything, didn't even know anything about it. I don't think they even knew she had a bipolar disorder till it was brought up when her missing persons case started. So they really just didn't really think anything of it. They tried to do what they could do, and they just weren't really educated enough into that type of thing around in 2013. Um, Talking about a mental disorder and talking about things like that was sort of taboo. It's not taboo now because everybody talks about it a lot and everybody's pretty open about it. Um, they just didn't really think anything of it. And there was another incident where she went to a live TV performance and she was writing a letter to the host, and she told the security that she demanded that this letter be handed to the host of that live performance. And she kept demanding and demanding. It was so much that she became a security risk where the security people had to escort her out of the building. And she also, it got to the point where she was just such a nuisance, even more of a nuisance to the people she was staying with, and they complained to the management finally, and the management had her go and stay in room 412, and they made her stay in that room by herself, because she was just so, they just gave her a room by herself. Really, they didn't make her, but they just gave her a room by herself. That way she wouldn't become such a nuisance to everybody else. And she stayed in that room until she went missing on January the 31st, 2013. She was supposed to check, nobody really noticed that she had went missing until the 1st of February 2013, when she was supposed to check out and never checked out. She was supposed to stay in contact with her parents, but she never called her parents. Her parents never heard from her. They grew concerned, so they called the LAPD. They went down there and interviewed people. They started searching for this young 21-year-old Canadian tourist for, like, I want to say 3 weeks, 2 or 3 weeks. And during the 2 or 3 weeks, the detectives who were on the case were also dealing with another case that was involving a veteran who was went on a murder spree, so to speak, and they were dealing with that around the time the Elisa Lam case started. She was reported missing, and anytime somebody's reported missing, they're not really given a status whether they're dead or alive, because they don't know if this person is or isn't. And sometimes with a missing persons case, it's usually a 24-hour limit. However, the limit is for missing persons. But if a missing person's missing and they have a mental disorder or some type of problem, it becomes priority. Although that's sad to say that, because you would think every missing person case should be priority. I think in this terms it should be. I mean, I could be wrong, but that's what I hear. But it's just, I think every missing person's case should be treated like any other case, because this is a human being that's missing, regardless of their age. They're missing, and that person's worried and concerned, and you would think that police officers would do something about that. And it just goes to show that law enforcement in California aren't any better than anywhere else, because they would have called law enforcement when she started to become a nuisance to people. They would have called law enforcement when they were down here, but there was a tendency where they would call law enforcement, but they would never show up. Or it would take them forever to show up. And that's bad on their part, and bad on the hotel's part too, because it makes them look bad just as much as it makes them look bad. And they would have done that, but her parents flew out with their sister. They flew out. They were involved in the search for Elisa Lam. They searched for about up until February 19th. They were searching for her, but like I said, during that time there was the detective that was going through some camera footage, and they came across some camera. His partner and him automatically saw this footage of or basically all of a sudden saw this footage of Elisa Lam in an elevator, because there was elevator cameras in there. Mind you, this place really wasn't all that up to snuff in security very well. It really wasn't known to be the most secure place in the world. It didn't have a whole lot of cameras in places where it should have had cameras in it. But they had cameras on the elevators, though. So it took like a couple of minutes of footage of Elisa Lam before she went missing. And it showed her having a strange behavior where she would kind of look both ways and hide, and then look both ways, or go all the way out, stand to the left, go back in, press some buttons. She pressed all the way to floor 7, and then somehow ended up pressing the hold the door button. I don't think she realized that she had did that. Some people speculate that there was something in front of that door, because when it closed, when she finally disappeared on the left side, she finally just disappeared from the view of the camera. There was a part where the door kind of did a little skip and then finally closed all the way, so they thought that maybe there was some missing footage. Some people speculate that there's missing footage of that. They're speculating now, when law enforcement released it, that it was slow. There was a lot of red flags in this video, a lot of suspicion about this video, and it went on for a while. A lot of people had a lot of suspicions about her death. Some people thought foul play was involved. Somebody thought that somebody had probably murdered her or something, because the hotel was so notorious for all of that. And it was just a very scary and very creepy video. If you wish to see that video, you can find it on YouTube. All you have to type in is the Elisa Lam elevator footage, and it'll pop up, or you can look for it on your Google search engine, and you can find it there too and watch it for yourself. It's very creepy. Or you can also see it on the docu-series for the Cecil Hotel, and also the series centered around Elisa Lam's case. And also, you can also see the footage again from the Ghost Avengers episode series that happened in January 2021. You can see that too. And that was the only footage they had. They released it to the media, hoping that they would help her find it. And during that time, a couple from London flew in from London, because, they just wanted to be tourists. They wanted to see different places. So they traveled to the United States, where they, explored downtown Los Angeles, but they didn't really think anything of it when they saw the room was kind of in poor condition. But any type of hotel that's cheap is going to be not really the best looking, even though you walk in and the whole bottom floor is best looking, but sometimes the rooms are not always what they seem. But, they were trying to make the best of it. They went and explored around, and did everything. And then they started noticing that the water was different colors. It started tasting funny. And then they complained about it. A lot of people were complaining about it. But this couple complained about it to management. They put them on the top floor underneath the same room that they were in. The water pressure was bad. They complained about the water again. A lot of people started doing that again, and so they finally said, okay, we're gonna have maintenance go check this out, find out what's going on. So the maintenance worker was sent to the water tanks that are located on the roof, and there's also a key you have to use to go through a fire escape as well, but there's also a way for them to get out there to check the water tanks as well, and even though alarm would go off. Now, here's the kicker, and here's another kicker. You would think that if somebody went out that door, or went out a window, or anywhere that was connected to that fire escape, if there was an alarm, it would have went off. And it didn't, and nobody knew that she even went out there, so obviously they weren't paying attention to the alarm, or she went out somewhere else, or something, but she got in that specific area somehow, which I will go more into it. So he went out there, he was checking the water tanks. I'm not really sure exactly which specific water tank she was in. I think she was the one in the front with the weird pentagram that was on there, but I don't think it's there anymore. I don't know. But it was one of the water tanks. He happened to open it up. When he got out there, that water tank door was open. Or when he got out there, he said the water tank door was closed. when the LAPD went searching for Elisa Lam, they noticed that that water tank door was open. Why they didn't search that water tank, why the dogs didn't sniff it, I have no idea. I'm not an expert in that, but you would think that if a door was open, you would go check out and find out if something's in there. But when the guy went and checked the water tank, he opened the lid and he found Elisa Lam unclothed, undressed. There was no clothing, no underclothing at all. She was completely declothed. There was nothing. It was just, and she was just naked, nothing. And she was floating face up, and her clothes were at the bottom of the tank, which makes it even more strange because, you wouldn't think that even though somebody with the bipolar disorder would do that, but, there again, there's like an impulsive, decision making where they just don't think of the consequences of the decision they were making. So, she could have been influenced by her bipolar disorder. She can be influenced by a whole lot of things. A lot of people still speculate that it was an accidental drowning. A lot of people were really weirded out by her autopsy, which I'll get into that too. They just had found her on January the 19th of February of 2013 floating in one of the water tanks, and they pulled her out. She didn't have any ligature marks. She didn't have any trauma to the head or trauma anywhere else to the body. It was ruled unknown for a while because the coroner didn't really know it, and then it went to accidental, then it went back to unknown, and then it finally was confirmed it was an accidental drowning. And not many people think that it was an accident. Even her parents come to the conclusion that it was an accident. They did try to file a wrongful death suit against the Cecil Hotel, but it got thrown out. Go figure. The hotel staff is not really responsible for her death, but they are responsible for those water tanks. They are responsible for the safety of the guests and the safety of the people in that building. And if they're not doing what they're supposed to do to keep everybody safe in that building, or at least keep everybody happy in that building, then there's a problem, in my opinion. And with those water tanks not being locked in 2013, that was a huge red flag, because even though they're not at fault for what they were going through, or if they had a mental disorder, it's not their fault, but it is their fault for not keeping those tanks locked, and it was their fault for not keeping that person safe and safety, and checking on that person and making sure that person was okay, even despite it being a unusual behavior or being normal to see somebody go through that. You still want to check on them. I'm not saying you have to call the police or anything like that, but just go and check on them, common sense. And there was a lot of faulty in a lot of things. A lot of people pointed out to LAPD that they delayed the inevitable of looking for a body in the water tank. A lot of people were just pointing a lot of fingers. Still a lot of speculate her death wasn't accidental. A lot of people think that there was an influence that happened that made her go in there. There was a lot of things. Her talk, still to this day, people have some conspiracy theories about what happened. A lot of people may have come to terms with that, but they still think that there's something else at play there, and I still think that there is too, but we don't know. That's the strange part about this whole situation, and this whole case was just weird. Anyway, enough of my babbling. I hope you guys got a lot out of this episode. I hope that this story was interesting, but I also hope that you got a lot out of it, a lot of information, a lot of history, and just a lot of things of knowing what to look for when you're going through a missing persons cases. Well, a little glimpse into what happens when things go wrong, when things get misinterpreted, or when things don't go the way that it should go, just a little glimpse into what happens when cases get handled the wrong way. And it's crazy, so I hope you guys got a lot out of that. It's a tragic death to a 21-year-old. It's really tragic to see such a life that had so much potential, so much to give, and then just for her to go out that way is just really tragic and really sad. But if you wish to see more on about that case, go to your Netflix or Discovery Plus apps, and you will see the episodes that were dedicated and around the Lisa Lam case and around the Cecil Hotel. You guys should go check those out. Also, if you haven't subscribed to my channel, hit that red subscribe button and that notification bell so you'll be notified as to when I upload podcast episodes or other videos in the future. Follow me on all of my social medias if you wish to stay up to date with everything. Go check those out. Also, my main channel was listed in the description underneath this episode as well. I hope you guys have an awesome day or night wherever you're listening to this from, and I will catch you in episode number 5. Laters.